Is it possible for me to not? Okay. This sounds okay. 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 So we are? Okay, great. Are we underway? Great. Okay, thanks. Thank you very much for the introduction. There's handouts, by the way, for this talk. So does anyone not have a handout? And Daniel, if you can catch anyone who comes in late, that would be great. So thanks to Olbeth, Katja, and Daniel for organising this conference, which has been great, at least up until this point. It might go downhill now, but so far so good. I'm going to try and beat Michael with respect to how many apologies I issue at the beginning. I think he did 2, I have 3. So first of all, thanks to Michael, actually, I've got a sore throat, so I may start coughing and spluttering at some point, so apologies in advance in case I do. Secondly, I'm a bit ancient with these things, so I rarely do PowerPoint, so this is a handout-based talk, so apologies for that. And the third and final apology, I fear this paper may not be as interdisciplinary as I think I should have done a slightly more interdisciplinary paper. So this may be a bit tough on the non-philosophers, but I'll try and go slowly. If at any point you completely don't understand what I'm saying, then just shout out, David, I have no idea what you're saying, and I'll try and explain. And of course, there will be the question session when I can try to elaborate a little bit more. And actually, I gave this talk in Australia to an interdisciplinary audience, although an earlier version, and no one understood anything, except the people who travelled from Glasgow with me, which was a bit unfortunate. But I've now colour-coded the handout, so that will make everything perfectly clear. Although I can't remember the scheme, but maybe it will become evident. Okay, so let's get going. Suppose I ask you why you took some painkiller. You take a painkiller and I ask you why you took a painkiller. You might well say, you might think it's an odd question, but you might well say, well, because I was in pain. You say, and I might ask, well, so what? Well, you might say, pain's unpleasant. And being an irritating philosopher, I might say, so what? And you might say, amongst other things, you might say, well, look, pain's unpleasantness is bad for you. Someone who's undergoing unpleasant pain, the unpleasantness is something that's bad for them. And that seems right to me. That normative, that value claim, that seems right to me, that pain's unpleasantness is bad for the person undergoing it. Okay, and actually I should say pain's unpleasantness is pro tanto, overridably bad for the person who's undergoing it. Okay, so notice I said pain's unpleasantness. Now some pains, arguably, are not unpleasant. Opiates might be a case of this, people on opiates. The phenomenon of pain asymbolia may be a case of this. People who have pains but say they don't mind them, they're not at all unpleasant. So some pains may not be unpleasant. And I'm not saying that those pains are bad. I'm saying that unpleasant pains are bad in virtue of their unpleasantness. Notice I also said pro tanto, overridably. Okay, so my claim is completely compatible with it also being the case that pains are very good for you, including unpleasant pains, are very good for you indeed. And that's surely true. People who are incapable of pain, pain insensitive, so different from the pain asymbolics I just mentioned, they tend to die young. So pain is clearly good for you, but I'm claiming that its unpleasantness is also bad for you. That will often be overridden by the pain's goodness. Okay, now I also think that, so I'm not about to do a strip, I'm just getting hot. I also think that your unpleasant pain is bad for you non-instrumentally. Okay, so it's not just bad for you, not just pro tanto bad for you, it's bad for you non-instrumentally. That is independently of its bad consequences. It's bad for you, if you like, in itself. My point is this: suppose I stretch your fingers back, causing you unpleasant pain. The thought is there's 3 bad things to be located here. First of all, causally upstream, if you like, from the pain, there's the bodily damage, or the near bodily damage, or the threat of bodily damage, and that's bad for you. Secondly, causally downstream of the pain, in other words, an effect of the pain and its unpleasantness, are going to be some emotional consequences. So worry about the pain and worry about what's causing the pain, perhaps distraction from other things you want to be doing, and those things, arguably, are bad for you. But I think there's a third thing, causally mediating between the damage and the emotional consequences, which is the pain's unpleasantness itself. And the thought is that unpleasantness itself is also bad for you, and bad independently of what caused it, and independently of what it causes, or at least independently of the badness of what it causes. Make sense so far? Okay, so the thought is pain is pro tanto, non-instrumentally, bad for you, or rather its unpleasantness is bad for you. So what? Yeah. So by that I just mean overridably. So if I'm in pain, my claim is bad for me, but let's suppose that particular pain saved my life. Well, then that pain was also good for me. And you might say overall that pain was good for me. Nonetheless, in an overridable sense, there was some badness there. It was just trumped, overridden by its goodness. So that's all I mean by pro tanto. Overridably is probably a nicer way of putting it, not being Latin. Okay, so in recent years, why is this important? In recent years, philosophers have begun to give account of what pain's unpleasantness is, what constitutes the unpleasantness of a pain, what it is for a pain to be unpleasant. And notice, if what we just said, well, I just said it, but I hope you agree, is right, that unpleasant pain is non-instrumentally bad for you, then it looks like those accounts of pain's unpleasantness have to meet a condition I'm going to call the normative condition, in red at the top of your handouts. Being in unpleasant pain could consist in being in state phi only if state phi is non-instrumentally bad for its subject in the relevant cases. So don't worry too much about the details. The thought is if you're going to explain what it is to be in unpleasant if you're going to explain what it is to be in unpleasant pain in terms of your being in some state, you better make sure that that state is a state that is non-instrumentally bad for you to be in, at least if you think it's non-instrumentally bad for you to be in unpleasant pain. So that's what I'm calling the normative condition. Okay, and now that's a worry for me. That normative condition is a worry for me. Why is it a worry for me? Because the account of pain's unpleasantness that I like, that I hold, is a view called evaluativism. And recently, 4 philosophers, Murat Aidid, Matthew Fulkerson, Hiller Jacobson, and Michael Brady, have all argued that my view, evaluativism, can't meet that condition. Okay? So call that complaint that they have against my view, I haven't told you what my view is yet, but call that complaint that they have the normative, or if you like, the value objection to evaluativism. So here's the plan. Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and explain to you what evaluativism is, what my view is, what the threatened view is. Then I'm going to say why my critics, like Michael and the rest, think that my view can't meet the normative condition. And then I'm going to explain how I think evaluativists should respond, which broadly will include 2 things. Negatively suggesting that my critics are in just as much trouble as I am, and then positively trying to suggest positive ways that evaluativists can respond to this challenge. A challenge which, by the way, I really feel. I think they've made a very nice point, and I'm struggling now to respond to it. Okay, so what is my view? What is evaluativism? Let's begin, in order to introduce my view, by introducing a traditional philosophical distinction between 2 things. So on the one hand, mental states that are representational. Mental states that carry representational content, that inform you of something. So for instance, a visual experience that there's a red tomato before you. That's the thought is carries the content. That experience carries the content or information, whether that content's true or false, that there's a red tomato before you. Beliefs are another example. If you believe that Berlin is the capital of Germany, then the thought is you're in a mental state that carries the content, carries the information, embodies the information, whether true or false, that Berlin is the capital of Germany. Now, by contrast, the tradition I've got in mind says that by contrast with states like that, visual experiences and beliefs, there are on the other hand, mental states that don't carry content, that are, if you like, representationally blank. And pains were often thought to be paradigmatic cases of those states that don't inform you of anything, that are just representationally blank. Bits of phenomenal consciousness, phenomenology, but not actually informing you anything, not actually telling you anything about the world. The thought was perhaps you can infer from your pain that you're injured in a particular case, just as you can infer from seeing some smoke that there's a fire, but the pain doesn't itself inform you that your body is injured or inform you of anything else or at least not in the way that the visual experience informs you that there's that red tomato in front of you. So that contrast was quite a traditional contrast, and pains were often located on the non-representational side. Now, my view rejects that second claim. It rejects the idea that pains are blank. It says that pains are not blank, they're representational, they carry information. Pains represent, on my view. And by the way, not just on my view. It's going to turn out lots of people agree with that these days. They represent whether truly or falsely, whether accurately or illusorily, they represent. So in particular, my view is account A. This is evaluative, finally, on your handout. This will sound a bit abstract at first, but I'll try and explain it. You're having an unpleasant pain consists in these two things. You're having an interoceptive experience representing that your body is damaged, and secondly, that same experience representing that that damage is bad for you. Okay, so again, you're having an unpleasant pain consists in you having an interoceptive experience that a part of your body is damaged, and that same experience informing you or representing that that damage is bad for you. That's the view that I'm calling evaluativism. So according to that view, pains are perceptual experiences, like visual experiences, but they're interoceptive perceptual experiences. What do I mean by that? Well, the kinds of experiences that, in virtue of which you're aware of your body from the inside, as they say. So by contrast, you can look down at your foot, but that's not being aware of your body from the inside. Interoceptive experiences are experiences by which you're aware of your body from the inside. Think of it as a sixth sense, if you like. Okay, and the thought is that not only are pains interoceptive experiences that have content, that carry information, but they're pains in virtue of the content they carry, and they're unpleasant in virtue of the content that they carry. In particular, an experience is a pain on this view in virtue of it representing, truly or falsely, that your part of your body is damaged. And that pain will be unpleasant in virtue of representing, truly or falsely, that that damage is bad for you. Okay? That's the thought. So again, the thought is that pains are unpleasant in virtue of a certain evaluative content, an evaluative informational representational content. They're telling you that something's wrong. And it's in virtue of that they're unpleasant. Hence the name evaluativism. Okay, now to really get your mind around that view, you need to keep distinct two kinds or maybe two loci of badness. On the one hand, there's the badness that evaluativists think unpleasant pains represent, tell you about. That's the badness of some instance of bodily damage. I sometimes call that bodily badness or badness. So there's that on the one hand, the badness of, I hurt my finger, the badness of the bodily state there that my pain is telling me about. That's one kind of badness, or one locus. On the other hand, there's the badness that evaluativists and others take unpleasant pains to possess. The thought is the pain itself, the unpleasantness of the pain itself is bad. I sometimes call that badness. But all I mean by that is the badness of the unpleasantness. So there's the badness of the state that's getting represented by the pain, and then there's the badness of the pain or its unpleasantness itself. You've got to keep those two things separate or everything goes nuts and you just completely lose your place. Okay, so notice now that the shape of this view is this. Your pain in a particular case is bad. It's bad in virtue of being unpleasant because it's unpleasant. And it's unpleasant because it represents bodily badness. It represents to you the badness of some bodily state. So in short, the view I'm endorsing says this. Your pain is bad for you, it is bad for you, because it represents a bodily state as being bad for you. So the pain itself is bad for you by dint of, in virtue of, representing a bodily state as being bad for you. Your pain's unpleasantness is bad for you because it represents a state of damage in particular as being bad for you. And that's exactly where my critics, understandably, get upset. Because they ask, why think that an experience representing that a state is bad for you should thereby itself be bad for you? After all, mental states rarely possess the properties that they represent. A visual experience or a belief about a red tomato isn't itself a red tomato. It's a visual experience or a belief, right? So why think, my critics say to me, that a pain that represents or tells you about some bodily badness should itself be a bad state. And then the thought is, but pain is a bad state, so my view can't capture that, so my view must be false. Again, this is sometimes called the messenger shooting objection. Maybe that's a good way of thinking about it. The reason it's sometimes called that is that evaluativists, it said, model pains on messengers who are bringing you bad news about your body. But the thought is, when a messenger brings you bad news, what's bad for you is what the news is about, if it's true. Okay? It's not the messengers conveying the news to you that's bad for you. So again, if you're an evaluativist and think that your pains are, as it were, messengers, then you can't explain the badness of the pain itself, because it's just a messenger. Don't shoot the messenger. Hence my critics claim, while evaluativists can, of course, explain what justifies your eliminating some state of bodily damage, what justifies that is just the badness of the damage. What evaluativists can't do, they argue, is explain what justifies eliminating the unpleasant pain itself. It's just a messenger. They can't, in other words, or we can't, evaluativists can't, explain the badness of the unpleasantness. Okay? To put it another way, evaluativists, it said, can't explain why it's rational or justified to take a painkiller. Okay. At its very simplest, one final time, here's the worry about my view. Evaluativists like me explain something that is non-instrumentally bad, namely pain's unpleasantness, in terms of something that is not non-instrumentally bad, namely an experience's possession of evaluative information or content. That's the worry. Okay, so in what follows, I'm going to discuss 5 strategies for trying to meet this worry and trying to meet the normative condition. And as the table on the handout shows, it's going to get a bit complicated, hopefully not too much so. 3 of those strategies, 1, 4, and 5, are strategies that I think evaluativists can use. And I'm going to recommend in particular 5, right at the very end of the talk. Meanwhile, strategies 2 and 3, which we're just about to come to, those are strategies that my critics advance in defense of their own views, and I think those strategies don't work. Okay, so let's just go through these 5 strategies one by one. Okay, so strategy 1, and this is a strategy that evaluatives might try to use, is very simple. It's the strategy that we should just deny this normative condition. In other words, we should just deny what I began at the very beginning by saying. We should deny that the unpleasantness of pain is non-instrumentally bad for its subject. What we should say instead is that it's instrumentally bad. It's bad only instrumentally, only in virtue of the badness of its consequences. Now, Manolo Martinez, a philosopher in Barcelona, has argued for that in a recent paper. He thinks that the key to pain's badness is its motivationality. Pain gets you to do stuff. And he tries to explain its badness in terms of that. Pain, he thinks, motivate you in particular to act in ways that reduce or prevent bodily damage. And he thinks that that involves the pain intruding into your internal ranking of things you want to do. So he has this sort of model of action on which you have a sort of internal to-do list. And when you're in pain, it interferes with that to-do list. It pushes, and everything that, wherever it's inserted its aim, the thing it's trying to get you to do, everything below that gets demoted. And that intrusion into your practical rankings is what's bad about pain. Here's a really, really simple case. You may want to go for a walk, but the pain in your ankle stops you from going for a walk. That kind of intrusion into your practical priorities is what's bad about pain. That consequence of pain, that's all that's bad about pain. And in particular, pain is not non-instrumentally bad. Now, if he's right, that's good for me. Even though actually he's not an evaluativist, that would help me, an evaluativist too. Why? Because evaluativists like me tend also to think that pains are motivational, so we could just give his account. Okay, we could just say pains are not non-instrumentally bad, we don't need to account for that. Unfortunately, I don't think he is right. And here's a really quick gesture at why. First, suppose you're under torture and you scream, so you're in absolute agonizing pain, and you scream, "I cannot stand this any longer." Now, what exactly is it in that case that you can't stand? Now, Manolo, I think, has got to say, is the pain interfering with what you otherwise would want to be doing? And that just doesn't, and this is a bit of a blank appeal to intuition, but that just doesn't seem to capture the crucial thing that's bad here, that it's interfering with your ranking of priorities. Surely it's rather the awful way that things feel to you at that moment, the way things seem to you. That's what's bad. Okay, that's brief, but I did say it was going to be a gesture. We can talk about it later if you like. Secondly, and this will be pretty brief too, these are just gestures, consider the following two scenarios involving a character I'm going to call Stan. Stan's an old man. He's content with the fact that he's about to die in an hour. He's okay with that. And he's spending that last hour walking barefoot along a beach, enjoying the last moments of a sunset just as the sun's dipping over the horizon. Okay, two ways this story could develop. In situation one, as he's walking along the beach barefoot, Stan steps on a sharp stone. Now, it's not sharp enough and the force isn't great enough to inflict any damage. Okay, so he doesn't undergo any damage. And it doesn't annoy or upset him. It's a very brief, fleeting pain he feels. But it does cause him an intensely unpleasant pain, as I've just said. Okay, so the stone doesn't damage him, doesn't cause him any emotional suffering, but does cause him a very brief, unpleasant pain. And it causes him to look down at his foot, unfortunately, at just the moment that the sun's dipping below the horizon, which is his favorite part of of sunsets. Okay, situation two, very similar, except he doesn't step on the stone. Let's say the stone's a meter to the left. He doesn't step on the stone, though being in an interworld way, very unlucky as it were, there's a noise and some bushes. Okay, and he turns to look at the noise, and again, as it were, misses the sunset's last seconds, okay, as the sun is dipping below the horizon. So no stepping on the stone, no pain, but distracted by the noise in the bushes, misses the sunset's last seconds. Okay, now intuitively, I suggest, so you know this argument's going to be a bit weak, because I've just said intuitively, you must agree surely, that though neither of those two situations is very bad for Stan, okay, it seems to me that the former situation, the one where he's in unpleasant pain, albeit very briefly, is very slightly worse than the second situation. And if you agree, the question is, how might you try to explain that? And I think you can't do it in terms, as Manolin might want to, of the intrusive effect of the pain Stan feels in situation one. Namely, it's making him miss that sunset, as he misses the sunset in both situations. Nor can you explain it in terms of the emotional effects of the pain in the first situation, because it doesn't have any emotional effects. It's fleeting, he doesn't get annoyed or irritated or anything like that. Nor can you explain it in terms of damage caused in the first situation, because I stipulated that no damage was caused in the first situation. So instead, I think the best explanation, the most plausible explanation of why that first situation is marginally worse for him is just the non-instrumental badness of the unpleasantness of the pain that he feels in that first situation and doesn't feel in the second situation. Needless to say, it's very far from being conclusive, but that's the kind of worry I have with instrumentalism, even though it would help me. I'd like it to be true, but I think it isn't. Okay, so how else should evaluativists respond to the normative objection, the idea that we can't accommodate the non-instrumental badness of pain? Well, I'm going to proceed in two ways. I'm going to question whether my critics' own accounts of pain can meet the condition. I said this already. And then I'm going to propose two strategies by which I think evaluativists can meet the condition. So let's start with the negative bit. Let's now start looking at my critics and what they say about pain. So to explain pain's unpleasantness, my critics invoke not the evaluative content or information carried by pains, they invoke desires. Okay, so one of my critics, Michael, and others, embrace what I call the second-order desire view, or slightly offensively, SOD. And it goes like this on the handout. This is in green, account B, SOD. Second-order desire view. You're having an unpleasant pain, according to this view, consists in two things. You're having a pain, and again, we can think of that still as an experience representing to you damage in a part of your body. Plus, and this is the crucial bit, you're having an intrinsic desire that that pain not occur, that it not be occurring. Okay, that's what I call the second-order desire view. Let me give you the first-order desire view, then I'll try and explain these views in a bit more detail. So the first-order desire view is right below it on the handout, and it, by the way, is embraced by my other three critics, Ide, Fulkerson, and Jacobson. And it says, you're having an unpleasant pain consists in you're having, again, a pain, and again, let's think of that as a damage-representing experience, plus, and this is the crucial bit, an intrinsic desire that the damage represented by the pain not be occurring. That's what I call the first-order desire view. So notice that both those views, SOD, the second-order desire view, and FOD, the first-order desire view, explain pain's unpleasantness in terms of a desire. Again, in terms of you're having alongside the sensory experience of your pain a desire. But there's an important difference between the two views. According to the second-order desire view, the unpleasantness constituting desire is a desire for the pain not to occur, for that experience, that sensory experience not to occur. Quite straightforwardly, the view, if I get lost in the details, it's really quite straightforward view. The thought is, your pain counts as unpleasant simply in virtue of you having a desire for it not to be occurring. And an intrinsic desire, by the way. So not a desire for it not to be occurring in order to achieve some further end, but just a desire for it not to be occurring simpliciter. Okay? That's all it means on this view to say that a pain is unpleasant, is that you don't want it, basically. Okay, according to the first-order desire view, by contrast, again the thought is the unpleasantness consists in a desire, but the unpleasantness constituting desire on the first-order view is a desire for the bodily damage represented by your pain not to occur. So quite simply, your pain counts as unpleasant simply in virtue of you are having a desire for that instance of damage, which one? The one represented by the pain, a desire for that instance to cease or not to be occurring. That's what constitutes the unpleasantness of your pain. The unpleasantness of a pain just consists in your having that bodily directed desire on the first order view. By the way, when I say second order desire, I just mean a desire directed at some other mental state, in this case, a pain experience. And the first order desire is a desire directed at your body, basically. Okay. Now, both kinds of desire theorists, so FOD theorists on the one hand, SOD theorists on the other hand, argue that their accounts succeed where valuativism allegedly fails. Again, they think their views can meet the normative condition. They think they can explain the non-instrumental badness of pain's unpleasantness. How? Well, one route they take is strategy 2 on the handout, which I call the real desire frustration strategy. This is in yellow at the bottom of the left-hand side of the first page of your handout, and it says this. Here's what you should do, they say, desire theorists. Explain pain's unpleasantness, not in terms of evaluative content like David, but in terms of desire, step 1. Then explain the non-instrumental badness of pain's unpleasantness in terms of the non-instrumental badness of desire frustration. Okay, that's the thought behind that strategy. So that strategy invokes a very general idea that some philosophers find compelling, which is that the frustration of your desires is bad for you. And an important point here, by frustration, I don't mean some feeling of frustration. I just mean the non-satisfaction of your desires. I just mean you not getting whatever it is that you want, okay? So some, not all, but some philosophers think that's non-instrumentally bad for a person, for them not to get the things that they want. And the idea behind this strategy is that quite generally, there's something non-instrumentally bad for you about the frustration of your desires in that sense. So for example, suppose that you want your mother to be healthy. The thought is, if she's ill, that's one respect in which that's bad for you. If your mother is ill, one respect in which that's bad for you, non-instrumentally, is that you don't want her to be ill. You want her to be healthy, but she's not. Your desire is frustrated. Okay, now what's that got to do with pain? How does that fit into strategy 2? Well, to see how that fits in here, let's start with the second order desire view. Now remember, that view says this. When you're in unpleasant pain, your pain's unpleasantness consists in your wanting the pain not to occur. But remember, it is occurring. You're in pain. So the experience you want not to be occurring is occurring, so you don't have what you want. Your desire is frustrated, and the thought is desire frustration is quite generally bad for a subject, bad for a person, so you're in a bad state. Why? Because you're in pain, you don't want to be, so you're a subject of desire frustration. So I can see the attraction of the second order view for that and lots of other reasons, actually. But now that Michael holds it, I'm committed to opposing it. And that's a lovely, nice, straightforward account of what's bad about being in pain. But I'm going to suggest that it doesn't work. Actually, I'm going to focus more on the first order view, partly just because 3 of my 4 critics hold that view rather than the second order view. But let me gesture at why I don't think what I've just said, the second order version of this, why I don't think it works either. The desire that second order desire theorists invoke to explain pain's unpleasantness are desires for your pain not to occur, notice. Okay, remember the view was your pain's unpleasantness, your pain's unpleasant because you want the pain not to occur, the pain to stop, the pain not to be happening, okay? They're not desires for the pain's unpleasantness not to occur. They can't be what I call anti-unpleasantness desires that these people are invoking to explain the unpleasantness for exactly that reason I just mentioned. The thought is, and they seem to, I think most of them seem to agree with this, you can't on the one hand explain pain's unpleasantness. Sorry, I mean, not put that like that. You can't explain pain's unpleasantness in terms of a desire for the unpleasantness to stop, because the unpleasantness, on their view, is constituted by the desire. Okay? So that's why they don't invoke what you might call anti-unpleasantness desires, they invoke anti-pain desires. And all I mean by that is desires for the pain you're feeling not to be occurring. And my worry is that we don't have anti-unpleasantness desires. And here's, as with all the arguments in this paper, a gesture at an argument. Suppose, again, you're in agony and you scream at me, I want my pain to stop. And that sounds like a report of an anti-unpleasantness desire. I want my pain to stop, very natural thing to say. But suppose now I give you a drug that eliminates only the unpleasantness of the pain. Okay, so this drug, like opiates do, some people think in some cases, eliminates the unpleasantness of the pain, but leaves you with a pain, if you like, that doesn't hurt. Okay, suppose that's the drug that I give you when you scream at me, I want the pain to stop. Now, I think that in that case, I've given you what you really wanted. Okay, I've satisfied your desire, the desire you were giving voice to. I think what you really cared about in that case was the pain's unpleasantness, not the pain itself. So again, given that, I worry that while we do have anti-unpleasantness desires, so in other words, we do want unpleasant states of ours to cease, we don't have desires specifically for the sensory experience of pain to cease. And if that's right, second-order theorists can't advance the strategy I just gave you, because that strategy said that, look, when you're in pain, your anti-pain desires get frustrated. And it's just not clear to me we have anti-pain desires. Very quick, but that's the kind of worry I'm trying to develop against second-order desire theorists. What about the first-order desire theorists? Let's just remember who they are. Can they make better use of this desire frustration strategy? Well, yeah, who are they? What do they say? Well, remember, they say this. They explain pain's unpleasantness in terms of desires, okay? But they say that the unpleasantness constituting desire, the desire that, as it were, constitutes the unpleasantness of your pain, is not a desire for the pain to stop, it's a desire for the damage, the bodily damage represented by your pain, to stop. Okay, now in their hands, strategy 2, this desire frustration strategy, comes to the following. Here's how they explain the badness of pain. When you have an unpleasant pain, they're saying, its unpleasantness is a matter of you wanting the damage that it represents to stop. Yet the damage is there, it's occurring. Your foot, let's say, is in serious trouble, it's damaged, it's physiological damage. Hence, your desire for the damage to stop and not to be occurring is frustrated, it's not satisfied. And they say, again, quite generally, desire frustration is bad for a person. It's non-instrumentally bad to have your desires not satisfied. Okay, that's the idea, but that won't work, I think. And to see why, consider the case I called pain illusion on the second side of the first page of your handout. Very simple case, I'll just read it out. You have a bad, unpleasant pain in your foot, caused, though, not by damage in your foot, which is perfectly healthy, but by some central neuropathy. Okay, so there's some brain condition going on that's causing you to feel an intensely unpleasant pain in your foot. That's the case I'm calling pain illusion. By the way, when I say pain illusion, it sometimes throws people. I don't mean that you think you're in pain, but you're not. You are in pain. You're in intensely unpleasant pain. But what it represents, namely damage in your foot, is not the case. Okay, in that sense, it's illusory. Okay, So in that case, your pain's unpleasantness is bad, surely. Perhaps really bad if it's an intensely unpleasant pain. But notice, your anti-damage desire is not frustrated, because your pain is illusory. It represents that your foot is damaged, okay? But it's wrong. Your foot isn't damaged. It's perfectly healthy. So there's no damaged state frustrating your anti-damage desire. Remember, the thought was your pain's unpleasantness consisted you having a desire for the damage represented by your pain not to be occurring. Well, the damage represented by your pain isn't occurring. There is no damage in your foot. So your desire is not frustrated. So they cannot explain the badness of your pain's unpleasantness in terms of a frustrated desire. Is that making some sense? Okay. Okay. Unfortunately, they're persistent, the first-order desire theorists, and they're a little bit unclear about this, but I think what they really want to say at this point, and in the end up saying, is this. Pause for drama. They appeal not to the real frustration of anti-damage desires, but to the apparent or subjective frustration of anti-damage desires. So what they tend to say is, look, David, you're right. In pain illusion, your anti-damage desire is not really frustrated. It's not really non-satisfied, okay? But it does seem to you to be frustrated. And this apparent or subjective desire frustration, that's what's bad for you. That's what's bad about pain. In short, for these theorists, what they tend to do is switch from what I call strategy 2, the real desire frustration strategy, to strategy 3, the subjective desire frustration strategy, and that's also on your handout in yellow, still on the first page. Here's what we should do, they think. Explain pain's unpleasantness in terms of desire. Let's keep doing that. But now what we should do is explain the non-instrumental badness of pain's unpleasantness in terms of the non-instrumental badness, not of desire frustration, but of subjective or apparent seeming desire frustration. That's the new strategy. So that's how they try and defend themselves against the pain illusion case. And that leaves the big question, I think, which is what do they mean by subjective or apparent desire frustration? And I think there's at least 3 things they could mean, and I think none of them will quite serve their purposes. So let's try and look at that. 3 things they could mean by subjective desire frustration that aren't, I claim, going to quite work for these first-order desire theorists. The first thing they might mean by apparent desire frustration is believed desire frustration, okay? So that would give you version 1 of the strategy on the handout, believed frustration. So here the thought would be, look, the badness of the unpleasantness of your pain in your foot consists in your believing that your anti-damage desire is frustrated, okay? That's what they might mean when they come back at me and say, look, I'm not talking about real desire frustration, I'm talking about subjective desire frustration. In other words, you're believing that a desire of yours is frustrated. That's not going to work. To see that, consider the following variant of the pain illusion case, which I call known pain illusion. I'll just read it off the handout. You've got a bad, unpleasant pain in your foot, caused not by damage in your foot, but by some central neuropathy. And not only is your foot not damaged in this case, but knowing that your experience is illusory, so somehow you know your experience is illusory, you don't believe that your foot is damaged. Hurts like hell, but you don't believe that your foot is damaged, nor, therefore, do you believe that your anti-damage desire is frustrated. Okay? So that case, it seems to me, prevents them from explaining the badness of pain in terms of believed desire frustration. Because it's a case in which you don't believe your desire is frustrated, but your pain is still bad. So just very quickly, let me recap the case in case this is getting too involved. The case is a case where your foot is absolutely in agony, right? But there's nothing wrong with it. Now the first order theorists think it's unpleasant by dint of you having a desire for the represented damage in that foot to stop. And we've already said that desire is not frustrated. But in this new case, you don't even believe that that desire is frustrated. So the people I'm up against, they can't explain the badness of pain in terms of desire frustration, and they can't explain the badness of pain in terms of believed desire frustration. Because there is no desire frustration, and there is no believed desire frustration in that case. At that point, what they're likely to do, and again I think tends to do, is say, look, actually here's what we mean by apparent desire frustration. We didn't mean believed desire frustration, we meant experienced desire frustration. And that generates version 2 of the strategy on your handout. Experienced desire frustration. The badness of the unpleasantness of a pain in your foot, they now say, consists in your undergoing experienced, not believed, experienced desire frustration in the following sense. You want your foot not to be damaged, but you experience, in this interoceptive pain experience, you experience that your foot is damaged. Okay, that's the new suggestion. So the idea here is this. When you have a bad, unpleasant pain, unpleasantness consists in you wanting the foot that it represents not to be damaged. And even if you don't believe, even if the foot isn't damaged, and even if you don't believe that the foot is damaged, you experience that the foot is damaged. That's what the pain experience is on their view. And in that sense, you undergo experienced desire frustration, and that's bad for you, they're claiming. Surprise, surprise, I don't think this works either. And to see why, consider a visual case, not a pain case for a second, but now consider a visual case, which I call Equality Woman, halfway down that side of your handout. Equality Woman. Equality Woman has a visual experience that she's standing before unequal parallel lines of unequal lengths. At the same time, very oddly, admittedly, she has a strong desire not to be standing before unequal parallel lines. But she knows her experience is an instance of the Muller-Lyer illusion, which is the little illusion on the left there, which you'll all be familiar with. And she knows, therefore, that the lines she's looking at are not really unequal. So let's slow down and try and explain the case. Equality Woman, remember, desperately wants not to be standing ever in her life in front of unequal parallel lines. She looks at the Muller-Lyer illusion. It looks to her like she is standing before unequal parallel lines. Okay, so in that sense, she's experiencing desire frustration. But she knows she's not standing before unequal parallel lines. She knows all about the Muller-Lyer illusion, and it strikes me that's a situation that need not be bad for her. If my opponents are right, that must be bad for her because she's undergoing experienced desire frustration in the sense I just gave you. Okay, but it just looks to me like that's a case. It could be bad for her in various ways, that case, but it needn't be bad for her. She could be completely calm about it. Though she does have a desire not to be in front of unequal lines, she knows she isn't, and she might be perfectly content about standing and looking at the Muller-Lyer illusion. Okay, here's the third and final thing that the FOD theorists, the first-order theorists, might say about what they mean by subjective desire frustration. They might say, look, I don't mean belief. I don't mean experienced desire frustration in the sense you've just been talking about. I mean experienced desire frustration in what I'm going to call the wide scope sense. Don't worry about that term if it doesn't help. Let's read it off the handout to start with. Okay, so this is version 3, experienced desire frustration in another sense, the wide scope sense. So they might say this, look, the badness of the unpleasantness of a pain in your foot consists in you experiencing desire frustration, but in the following sense. You experience your foot as being damaged, and you experience that damage as being desire frustrating. You actually experience it as being desire frustrating. So let me try and bring out that distinction. The idea is that wide scope experienced desire frustration is a matter not merely of wanting there to be no damage while experiencing that there is some damage. Rather, it's a matter of actually experiencing the damage as desire frustrating. In the latter case, notice, you don't merely have an anti-damage desire alongside, as it were, an experience that's representing some damage. Rather, in the latter case, your experience represents to you more than damage. It represents the damage as frustrating a desire of yours, an anti-damage desire of yours. It represents the damage as desire frustrating. That's a third thing they might mean by subjective desire frustration. So one more time, the putative frustration of your anti-damage desire actually enters into the content of your pain experience on this account. The property desire frustratingness is actually represented by your pain experience. And that's what's bad for you, they will claim. Now, I think that looks a lot more promising for them, okay? I can see that looks a lot more promising. See why I say that? Go back to Equality Woman. And suppose that this time it's the case not just that a quality woman wants not to be facing unequal parallel lines while experiencing some lines as unequal. Suppose this time she actually experiences the lines inequality as frustrating a desire of hers. Her visual experience actually represents the inequality. Now, if that's the case, my intuitions change a bit about this case. I start to think, look, it's not utterly implausible that that situation is necessarily a bad situation to be in. That her experiencing the lines she's seeing as actually frustrating her desires, actually experiencing those lines as frustrating her desires, that is a bad situation to be in. But for that, so I'm conceding, I think this is the best way for them to go, my opponents. But for that account of the badness of unpleasantness to work, two tweaks are called for. This is going to be pretty quick. We can talk about this later. First of all, I think the first-order theorist accounts not of the badness, but of the unpleasantness itself has to be tweaked slightly. I can explain why in questions if necessary. So in other words, I think they need to go from FOD, this view that says, look, the unpleasantness is a matter of having an experience of some damage and wanting the damage to not occur. You've got to give that up for a slightly different view, FOD tweaked on your handout, which says you're having an unpleasant pain consists in you're having an experience representing the damage in the foot as desire frustrating. So they've got to build that into the actual account of unpleasantness. So they've got to say this now. What it is for you to have an unpleasant pain in your foot, for example, is for you to have an experience that represents some damage in that foot and represents the damage in that foot as desire frustrating. Okay? And having said that, having got to that point, I think it would really be more plausible for them, partly given what a high-level property desire frustration is, to make one further tweak to the view and formulate it as follows. FOD further tweaked. I promise you, this is the final version. You're having an unpleasant pain in your foot consists in you're having an experience that represents damage in your foot as bad for you, in the sense of being desire frustrating. As bad for you in the sense of being desire frustrating. So here the idea is, look, yes, what we're saying is that the property that pain represents is states of damage as being desire frustrating, but your pains represents that property of desire frustratingness under this mode of presentation, under this description, if you like, in this way. They represent it to you as just that damage being bad for you. In what sense is it bad for you? That it's desire frustrating, but your experience just represents it to you as bad for you. So look, what I'm doing at this point is just saying I'm conceding to FOD theorists that that's not at all an implausible view. The view that your pain's unpleasantness consists in representing the desire frustratingness of a given state of bodily damage under the mode of presentation of that damage being bad for you, representing the state as bad for you in the sense of it being desire frustrating. And then their thought is that that's a bad state to be in, a state that represents your body as in a bad state in that sense. Only one problem for them, that's evaluativism. Okay? They've ended up, if they go along with my tweaks, damn it, they try not to, but if they go along with my tweaks, they've ended up with my view. A particular version of my view. It says that unpleasant pains represent the badness of bodily conditions, and that representing the badness of bodily conditions is bad for you. So it is a version of evaluativism, but it's a particular version, and an interesting version, I think, that includes a desire frustration account of the badness of the bodily state. Evaluativists are often asked, what the hell do you mean by a bodily state being bad? And, well, this kind of evaluativist has an answer. I mean desire frustrating. Okay? And the thought is, unpleasant pains are unpleasant by dint of representing states of your body as being bad for you, in that sense, that they're desire frustrating. But still, they are evaluativist. So I don't think that the FOD theorists can interpret apparent desire frustration that way, since if they do, they basically collapse. Their view collapses into my view, and officially they're supposed to be opposing my view. So in short, I think that FOD theorists, 3 of my 4 critics, lack a plausible, distinct account of the badness of pain's unpleasantness. In other words, I think they're in at least as much trouble as I'm in. Okay, so much for the negative argument. What about my positive suggestions? The negative argument was my critics are in as much trouble as I'm in. But look, again, how should evaluativists try to explain the badness, the non-instrumental badness of pain? I think there's 2 strategies that we might use. The first is strategy 4 on the handout, second page now of the handout. Let me read it out and then try to explain it. Don't explain, we might say, pain's unpleasantness in terms of desire. Don't be a desire theorist. but do explain its non-instrumental badness in terms of desire, in particular in terms of the frustration of a desire that your experience is unpleasantness, not the occurring. Okay, let me try and elaborate what I mean by that. Okay, this point, by the way, is made by Brian Cutter and Michael Tye in the literature, who are evaluativists, so this is the way they go. And the point really is, I think, very nice and very simple. What makes your pain unpleasant, according to them, is its evaluative content. It's telling you that something wrong, something bad for you is going on in your body. So they're evaluativists. But what makes your pain's unpleasantness bad for you, they say, is just the fact you want the unpleasantness to stop. You've got an intrinsic desire for the unpleasantness to stop. And if and when you do, the pain's unpleasantness is non-instrumentally bad for you. Again, your pain is unpleasant in virtue of representing some damage as bad for you, but the pain itself is bad for you simply because you want it, the unpleasant pain, and in particular its unpleasantness, to stop or to cease or to not be occurring. That's the view. Okay, I think it's got its attractions. In fact, if there's no better way, I think this is the way that evaluativist should go. Notice it's not instrumentalist. It might be beginning to look instrumentalist to you, but it's not. The idea isn't that the badness of unpleasantness consists in the badness of its effects. The idea is simply that the badness of unpleasantness consists in your not wanting it. It's invoking the same Humean normative idea that our opponents invoked. But notice, secondly, we are not our opponents. So strategy 4 is not the second-order desire view. Again, I think it's easy to think, oh, hang on, this is the second-order desire view. They've just given up. But it's not the second-order desire view, because the view doesn't say, well, sorry, let me do it the other way around. The second-order desire view says that pain's unpleasantness consists in anti-pain desires. Okay, this view doesn't say that. This defense of evaluativism says the following: pain's unpleasantness consists in evaluative content. But the badness of pain's unpleasantness consists in the frustration of anti-unpleasantness desires. Okay, so we're not giving up evaluativism here. So notice in particular, by the way, that this strategy doesn't invoke anti-pain desires at all. Those desires that get frustrated when you're in unpleasant pain are anti-unpleasantness desires. So that's a good thing, that this view doesn't invoke anti-pain desires if that argument I gestured at earlier, that we don't have anti-pain desires, is right. Okay, but I worry about whether I want to go this way. Again, if there's no alternative, I probably will. I quite like the strategy, but here's the worry, which I call strange love, on your handout, left-hand side of the second page. Rather than having anti-unpleasantness desires, or anti-unpleasantness desires, I should say, strange love loves pain's unpleasantness. He intensely desires the continuation of the intense unpleasantness of his pains. Okay, that's strange love. Now, strategy 4, I think, has to say something that I find pretty implausible about strange love, which is, again, on the handout. Strange love's unpleasant experiences are not bad for him non-instrumentally. Might be instrumentally bad for him, but not non-instrumentally bad for him. Not even pro tanto, not even overridedly. Okay? They're not even a little bit bad for him. In fact, they're really good for him. And not the pain, the unpleasantness of the pain is really good for him non-instrumentally. Moreover, that pro-unpleasantness desire of his, that love, as I put it, of his unpleasantness, can't be criticized for being inaccurate or irrationally aimed at something that's bad for him. You can't criticize that desire of his because it's not aimed at something that's bad for him. The unpleasantness would be bad for him only if and when he wanted it to stop, and he doesn't want it to stop. And those strike me as counterintuitive consequences. I describe them in the paper as awkward, which basically means I can't quite decide how unhappy I am with them. Look, I'm happy with the idea that non-unpleasant pains, asymbolic pains, maybe the kind of pains you have when you're on opiates, needn't be non-instrumentally bad, pro tanto. But I'm much less happy with the idea that an unpleasant pain's unpleasantness might not be non-instrumentally bad for you, not even pro tanto. Indeed, might be non-instrumentally good for you. That stretches credulity, I think, just that little bit further. So if there's a better way for evaluativists to go, or another way for them to go, I think they should, even though I think, Cutter and Tye can just dig their heels in here if they want to. And I think there is a better way for us to go, for evaluativists to go. Unfortunately, I've left myself not enough time to develop it in all of its beauty, in which case you'd obviously see that it's the right way to go. But let me, as I keep saying throughout this paper, gesture at it. Okay, So let me remind you what the normative objection was, because it came right at the beginning of the paper. Evaluativists like me say, what makes your pain unpleasantness? What makes your pain unpleasantness? What makes your pain unpleasant, I say, is it's carrying or conveying some information or content, in particular about the badness for you of some instance of bodily damage. And the worry against me was, how could a mental state's carrying or conveying some information be itself bad for you? Okay. And to make that point, my critics sometimes put it this way, which will be a useful way for what I'm about to say. Sometimes they say, look, suppose you believe you've got a serious illness, and you believe that that illness is bad for you. And suppose, by the way, that that belief is true. You really do have that serious illness. In that case, your situation is indeed bad for you. But, they say, is your believing your situation is bad for you part of what's bad for you? Is it bad for you in addition to the badness of the seriousness of the illness? Is your believing that your illness is bad for you in addition to the seriousness of the illness? Does your believing your situation is bad for you make your situation worse for you, non-instrumentally? And they say, look, surely not. And if that's right, they say to me, look, just as merely believing that things are bad for you isn't itself bad for you, so too merely experiencing that things are bad for you isn't itself bad for you. And if that's right, experiencing that things are bad for you can't be what pain is, or at least it can't be what pain's unpleasantness is. It can't be the case that what pain's unpleasantness is experiencing a bodily condition as bad for you. So that, remember, is the objection. And I'm going to make 3 steps in response. So first of all, the point against me is sometimes put in terms of what I call the why think question. That's on your handout. Why think having a perceptual experience representing that that your body is in a bad condition is itself bad for you? Why think that having an experience representing a body part is in a bad condition is bad for you? Now, I'm going to be even more dogmatic than everything else in this paper because I'm running out of time. I think because evaluativism is true. That's why you should think it. Okay, so we think that being in unpleasant pain is bad for you, and I think there's good reasons to hold evaluativism, and evaluativism says that what being in unpleasant pain is representing a bodily condition of yours as being bad for you. So there's good reason, I think, if those other arguments work, that there's a good reason to think that representing a bodily condition as bad for you is itself bad for you. Okay, that's very quick, but I want to go into the real meat of the point, so let me progress. At that point, they often say, well, look, even if you've now answered the why think question, why think that representing a state as bad for you is itself bad for you, what you've not done, David, is explained what's bad for you about perceptually representing the badness for you of damaged states of your body. What's bad about that? And in response, and this is pretty quick, but I'm inclined to say, that's true, I've not explained that. But you are in the same boat. You've not explained what's remember, they're desire theorists. You've not explained to me what's non-instrumentally bad about real desire frustration, or what's non-instrumentally bad about subjective desire frustration. We're in the same boat here. There may be very little for you to say about those things. Normative explanations maybe come to an end somewhere. But if you can say that, I can say that. So again, I think we're in the same boat. The final thing I think they're inclined to say is this. Look, none of what you've said so far, David, answers the normative contrast question, which is on your handout. If the intrinsic badness for you of an unpleasant pain constitutively involves, or partly consists in, you're perceptually representing that a bodily state is bad for you, then why isn't your believing or judging that a bodily state is bad for you intrinsically bad for you? So they say to me, look, if it's bad for you, or if rather the intrinsic badness of an unpleasant pain consists in your perceptually representing a bodily state as bad for you, then why isn't it bad to believe that you're in a bodily state that's bad for you? Okay, in response, I think I can say the following. First of all, look, consider a much more familiar question that's in some ways parallel to the question I've just given you. The phenomenal contrast question instead of the normative contrast question. It says this: if the phenomenal character of an experience in which a cube looks red to you constitutively involves your perceptually representing that a red cube is before you, why doesn't judging or believing that a red cube is before you have that same phenomenal character? Let me just explain the idea behind that. Philosophers of mind will be familiar with that kind of question. And the thought is just this. Look, your belief that there's a red cube before you on the one hand, that belief state on the one hand, and your visual experience that there's a red cube before you on the other hand, they share their content on the face of it. They tell you the same thing. There's a red cube before you, but they don't share their conscious feel. They don't share their phenomenology. They feel very different. Seeing a cube feels very different from judging or believing, perhaps with your eyes closed, that there's a red cube in front of you. Those two states feel very different. The visual experience, if you like, is a vivid, salient, sensory phenomenal character. The judgment doesn't. And the question is why? That phenomenal contrast question is why, given that they've got the same content, or on the face of it have the same content. And what I want to suggest is that there's more than a parallel between those two questions. There's more than a parallel between the question about the normative contrast between evaluative beliefs on the one hand and evaluative experiences on the other hand, and the question about why there's a phenomenal contrast between evaluative judgments on the one hand, a phenomenal contrast between visual representations of red cubes and stochastic belief representations of red cubes on the other hand. I think there's more than a parallel there. Why? Because I think the answer to the normative contrast question is simply this. The reason that perceptually representing the badness of a bodily state of yours is itself bad for you, when judging the badness of a bodily state for you isn't bad for you, is simply that perceptually representing the badness of a bodily state constitutes a feeling that is bad for you. It feels different. And in particular, the feeling that it's got is a feeling that's bad for you. Again, the thought is this. What's bad for us about pain's unpleasantness? This kind of really goes back right to that torture case, right at the very beginning, when I was arguing against Manolo Martinez. What's bad for us about pain's unpleasantness is its feel. And the key difference between a belief that your situation is bad for you and a perceptual experience, in particular an interoceptive experience that your body or your situation is bad for you, is the feel of those states. The evaluative content of the perceptual state contributes to a feel that is intuitively bad for you. So on this way of going, the job of explaining how evaluative content contributes to the badness of an experience just is the job of explaining how such content contributes to the feel of that experience. And that challenge isn't normative in character. It's an utterly general worry in the philosophy of mind, a worry that faces any view that gives content a role in constituting phenomenology. To put it one final way, there's a normative contrast between evaluative experiences and evaluative beliefs because there's a phenomenal contrast. They feel different, evaluative experiences and evaluative beliefs. So assuming that philosophers of mind can explain what it is in virtue of that beliefs and experiences differ phenomenally, they feel different, then there will be no more normative problem for evaluatism. Okay, let me just say one quite quick thing, which may be too quick to be helpful, but just in case it is helpful. Some philosophers say this sort of thing about what the difference is between perceptions on the one hand and judgments on the other hand. This is a bit metaphorical, of course, but they say, look, when you perceive that something is the case, that's not merely you're judging that it's the case, it's you're encountering a state of affairs in the world. It's that state of affairs in the world impressing itself on you. Again, all very metaphorical, but you get the sort of idea. And I think that kind of coheres quite nicely with what I've said so far for two very quick reasons, and then I promise I'll finish. First of all, it's the idea that the badness of your situation impressing itself on you, consciously encountering the badness of your situation. The idea that that's bad for you, I think, is reasonably intuitive. Your intuitions may differ, but I think sort of translating the crucial normative claim into that sort of terminology enhances its intuitiveness for what it's worth. Secondly, there are subjects with depersonalization syndrome, which, according to the DSM, these are cases where subjects feel detached from their bodies. It's for them as if they're living in a dream or a movie. Okay? So their bodies seem these aren't alien limb cases, but their bodies seem somehow unreal, removed from them in that sense. And there's also some evidence, which I think is intriguing, that their pains are not unpleasant, that there's a lack of affect, if you like, attached to their pains, and hence that their pains are not bad for them. Well, if what I've said is right, that's as things should be. My account predicts that, because their experiences are not, as it were, perceptually representing the badness of the conditions in their body. Okay? Their experiences don't have the full force, if you like, of perceptual experiences. That's even quicker than all the quick stuff earlier, so if that's not helpful, just ignore it. Bottom line, it seems to me that evaluativists might try and rebut the normative objection by drawing a distinction between perceptual representations on the one hand and judgments, in particular a phenomenal distinction. So in conclusion, the three big claims I've made are these, and then I'll stop. Accounts of unpleasantness do need to meet the normative condition. I don't think we could just be instrumentalists like Manolo Martinez. Unfortunately, then it would just be the whole problem would just be dealt with right there. Secondly, those who argue that my evaluativist view doesn't meet the condition, in other words, those who say I can't explain the badness of pain, I think have their own problems when it comes to that question. And finally, evaluativists, I think, can meet the condition. They can accommodate the badness of pain in either of two ways, by appealing to anti-unpleasantness desires, like Cutter and Ty do, and I'm still at times tempted to go that way, or if that strange love case is a worry for you, then another way for evaluativists to go is to try and essentially get clear about the dialectical order and the limits of normative explanation, and advert to the distinctive feel of perceptual experiences as against beliefs. And now you really will stop.
Thank you, David, for this wonderful presentation.
Who's the first? Thanks, David, for the talk. A very rich talk. There's lots I'd love to discuss with you. Just two things. One, another way to push the point about evaluativism lacking the capacity to explain the badness of pain is that beliefs are not motivational. So it seems you might want the badness to be somehow inherently motivational. When something is bad, it's in virtue of the badness that we want to get rid of it. And I know you sort of try and bring in desires through the back door, but it does seem like both desire-based theories and imperatival theories have a really major advantage over evaluativism with respect to getting negativity. Second thing, sort of a follow-up on that, the complaints about imperativalism. I mean, I have an imperatival version of an imperatival view. Just quickly on those. I mean, I think, if you think about the torture case, what we really need to imagine for the imperativism view is that somebody's having a sensation and a signal, a message that's extremely, directed at getting rid of that. So they're in a state of high motivation. You can imagine somebody having the same sensation and loving it, having the same sensation and being indifferent to it, but this is a case where they're really sort of fighting it. So the negativity is sort of there in the motivation. So I think motivational component is important to capture in general, but also does a lot to save these other theories from the worry that they lack negativity. Very quick meta thing for non-philosophers in the room. I think it's super weird that philosophers try to explain pain using constructs like representation, belief, and desire. These constructs have absolutely no place in psychology. The term belief is not present in the index of any psychology book, or desire. And if they do get naturalized, if they do find some correlates, they'll fractionate radically. There's not going to be one thing that is belief. There are going to be dozens of different kinds of mental capacities that have that direction of fit, likewise for desire. And I suspect that as these philosophical theories really start to dialogue with the sciences more, the way that they're stated now can't be maintained, and they'll end up having to choose between what kind of belief, what kind of desire, and some of those choices may turn out to do some very useful work in the theorizing.
Okay, thanks, Jesse. Also for the non-philosophers in the room, philosophers disagree about that. So some even naturalistically inclined philosophers will think there's a room for focused psychological concepts in the explanation of affect and other things. But yeah, there's obviously a huge ideological difference between you and me there. And the people I'm arguing with and I are on one side of that divide, and you're on the other. And we won't get to the bottom of that now. On the other two things, Yeah, taking your 2 points in reverse order. So you're an imperativist, but I think you're a second-order imperativist. So I mean, you won't like this way of putting it, but so again, for the non-philosophers in the room, your thought is that pain, or maybe the unpleasantness of pain, or maybe both, consists in you being in a state that is, as it were, commanding you to stop some pain state, some sensory, some state. Okay. And you said that clearly has an advantage because that second-order state is motivational, it's a bit desire-like, and that clearly has an advantage in explaining the normativity of the badness of pain. And I suppose that doesn't sound like an argument to me. I mean, I've given you reasons to think it doesn't have an advantage, and you just said that it does. So, I gave a worry that we don't have. What we do have, it seems to me, are motivational states directed at the unpleasantness of pain. I've got room for those. And indeed, if I go Cutter and Ty's way, I can invoke those to explain the badness of that unpleasantness. But admittedly, rather dogmatically, I mean, just to be you being dogmatic, rather dogmatically, I questioned whether we have imperatival or desire states directed just at the sensory state, the affect-free, if you like, sensory state. So far, I mean, it's not like I think you're clearly wrong, but it's just I need to be.
I couldn't get thought moment that went over my head. I didn't hear an argument, even an intuition.
Oh, I gave you an intuition pump. Well, the intuition pump was just that if you scream for help when in pain, as it were, scream for me to stop what it is that you don't want, and I give you something eliminating only the affect, I've satisfied your desire. Well, that's it. So the desire. So I've got rid of only the affect. So what at least the second-order desire theorists are saying that one of the critical desires here is focused on the sensory state has gone. Has not gone. That's still in place. The person is still in pain, but the pain is not unpleasant anymore. Now, this is the point at which I'm not sure how much more I can say to persuade you. It is just built to intuition at this point. But the thought is, I've satisfied. My intuition is at that point I've satisfied your desire. I've satisfied what you were asking me to do. You were expressing a desire. Admittedly, you expressed it by saying stop the pain, and I didn't stop the pain. I stopped the unpleasantness of the pain. Now, you've got to say I've eliminated the desire in the way that I've eliminated your desire for hunger if I don't give you food but punch you in the stomach. And again, this is just an appeal to intuition, but that doesn't seem a correct characterization of that case for me. So you're right, it's just an intuition pump, but there was at least an intuition pump. Yeah.
To me, the way to describe that case is now the sensation doesn't bother you anymore. So it's
true that you're no longer in an unpleasant pain. So, and this is what makes it difficult to know kind of which way to go. So it's true that you're no longer in an unpleasant pain, and the second-order desire theorists can certainly agree with that. They can agree that doesn't bother them. But the question is this a case of desire satisfaction or a case of desire elimination? Have I merely eliminated, like in the stomach punching case, your second-order desire, or have I satisfied it? And it seems to me that I satisfied it. Now, maybe a slightly different case, I was just thinking in the taxi on the way, in the car on the way here with you, is if I, instead of giving you a painkiller, I give you a weird painkiller in this sense, that it replaces the sensory pain with a sensory itch. Okay? Now, in that case, I think you might say, look, that's not really what I was after, David. It's still really unpleasant, just as unpleasant as before. That's not what I wanted. I wanted to get rid of the unpleasantness. And I'd say, hooray, at that point, because that's the desire that I think is in play there. So very quickly on your first point, and sorry, I think Michael's got a finger on that, but just very quickly on your first point, I take your point about motivationality, but two points. One question would be, why tie motivationality and normativity together unless you were going to go that sort of instrumentalist route, which I was trying to cast some doubt on. But also, and I think you'll think this doesn't amount to very much, but I do think that evaluative experiences are motivational, and I try to capture that too, in terms of the difference between belief and experience. So there can be sort of parallel move there. I think Michael.
Thanks, David. Yeah, great talk and very rich. And unfortunately, I'm with Jesse on this one because I'm a second-order desire theorist. Unfortunate for David. Here's another way of making the point. So, don't you say when you're pushing the intuition, don't you get what you really want when the unpleasantness is eliminated? Well, you might say yes and no, because usually we have a desire that the sensation stops, and you have a higher order desire that the unpleasantness stops. And so, in one way, the higher order desires satisfied, but the lower order one suddenly ceases. Okay,
Yeah.
so you don't get that one satisfied. So you say yes and no. And at this point, how can we decide between these cases? Cases where you say that I take it your line is, well, why posit the first order desire, the desire that the sensation stop in the first place in that case? Well, you might think, are there cases where there are unpleasant states where you don't have the higher order desire, and yet they're still motivational? And I take it, if that's a possibility, that's a good reason to say we have desires that the sensation stops. And it might be. So I might be experiencing something unpleasant that I don't, in a sense, mind. I don't have the higher order desire that the unpleasant state cease, but nevertheless, the unpleasant state could motivate me. So cases that fall short of suffering, for instance, I'm motivated all the time to do things that stop me experiencing mild discomfort, but I don't have a higher order desire.
Yeah.
If there are cases like that, then we have to explain the motivation. I take it Jesse's point would be that you explain the motivation by positing a desire or an imperative that the sensation stop. So if there are those cases, that would give you a reason, an independent reason for saying that there's another desire in play in these cases.
Okay, good. Thanks, Michael. And I mean, I do think it's close to a standoff at this point, so it's not like I think anything I said there is a conclusive refutation of the second order view. I mean, you're right, second order desire theorists can, and you do invoke a desire for the unpleasantness to stop, as well as, I mean, one reason that's cropping up here for going my way is parsimony, but let's put that to one side. And also, back up. You think there's a desire for the unpleasantness to stop and a desire for the sensory pain to stop. And that first desire is satisfied, in my case, where I give you the drug to stop the unpleasantness. And that first desire is eliminated. And yeah, I don't think there's a desire that's been eliminated in that case. And maybe the itch pain case there is helpful. If I give you a drug that leaves the unpleasantness but switches the pain for an itch, okay, you're going to have to say that I've partly satisfied what you wanted. And I don't think that, and I just think it's more intuitive to say, but this is where it's the standoff. Just say, no, you haven't. It's not that you haven't given me all of what I want. You haven't given me anything of what I want in this case. Okay, what I want, what I care about, what's important to me is that it hurts. Not just that there's some sensory pain here, it's that it hurts, that it's unpleasant. So if you just substitute that unpleasant state for another unpleasant state, you haven't given me anything that I wanted. Now you'll say, you're giving me something that I wanted, but not all. And there is a bit of a standoff. I might invoke parsimony. Increasingly, but this isn't developed, going back to Monday, I want to invoke the idea that the pain case is much more like, I think, the guilt cases, where the reasons your guilt state gives you are reasons not to get rid of the guilt state, which you can do with an anti-guilt pill, but to get rid of the wrong, to rectify the wrongdoing. I want to argue the pain case is more like that. I suspect you'll say they're asymmetric or something. So yeah, it's gonna run and run, but I take your point.
Thank you. So I would like to ask you to clarify if you can explain a little bit more on the normative condition. So it's not clear to me the relation, or not so obvious, the relation between unpleasantness and something being bad. So, and it's, so as a starting point might be unpleasant without being bad, but so here's one example. So imagine someone who likes to be mildly flogged.
So mildly flogged?
Mildly flogged, yeah.
Flogged?
Flogged.
Okay. Mildly flogged.
Yeah, and the kind of mild pain that this person gets is not unpleasant. And now imagine that it's like to be flogged on the left buttock, but not on the right one. Now, by being buttock in the left one, just a matter of game or whatever, by being flogged in the left buttock, the pain, she has some pain, but this is not unpleasant. Now, when this person is flogged on the right button, the pain is and pleasant. There seems to be nothing related to bad. This person never comes to believe that it's bad. There is no important damage. So if we want to distinguish these two pains, one seems to be pleasant, or at least not unpleasant, and the other one seems to be unpleasant. But nonetheless, there is nothing it seems to me that there is nothing related to badness.
About unpleasantness?
Yeah, so...
And in all cases, not just the buttocks case.
So so there are some examples in which the unpleasantness of pain seems not to be related to something bad.
Okay, this may not be addressing the worry, because I'm going to switch case at least for a second, but to go back to the case that's already come up a few times now, if you're in agony and I give you something that's going to lead, assuming you're prepared to admit that there are such dissociations between sensory pain and its affective aspect, if you like, okay? When I take away the latter, in other words, the unpleasantness, and leave you with your sensory pain, I think a lot of people are going to say, I'm now in a much better situation than I was before he gave me that drug. And all I've done is take away the unpleasantness, not the pain. Now, you might say, well, that's true in that case, but not in the buttocks case. But then I want to know what's special about your buttock, wasn't it? Your specific buttocks. But buttocks in general. What does bring, your case does bring to mind, involving buttocks and whipping, is masochists. Okay, and remember, I'm not saying that pain, that anyone who's in an unpleasant state is in a state that is overall bad, okay? If the unpleasantness is, and it does seem like there are cases like this, and sexual masochism might very well be one of them, if the unpleasantness is instrumentally bringing about great pleasure, then it might very well be that you're in an overall good state. That's quite compatible with acknowledging that the unpleasantness of the pain is, as it were, on the negative side of the ledger. It's bad, but it's massively outweighed by the fact that it's proving in this case, for whatever circumstances, to bring about pleasure. So I guess I want to stick to my guns on those sorts of grounds. Does that persuade you at all? No. Okay.
I'm a physicist. I'm a physicist. No, the previous person asked part of my question. I was going to say, don't you think the degree of pain has a lot to do with it, including the degree which is very, very slight or even positive, like pleasure that comes maybe from a very slight, not even calling it masochism or anything like that, but it could be. And second, what would you say about chronic pain? That's a very terrible illness which many people suffer, and how do you relate your theory in that case?
Okay, thanks very much. On chronic pain, my theory says it's really bad. It's unpleasant pain, and that's a really bad state to be in. And I think that's going to be common to all sides of the debate. Of course, there is the question whether I can explain the badness, and that's what the whole paper is about. But assuming I can, I'll just say chronic pain is bad. You're worried, I'm sorry, not seeing the worry there. It might be the following worry, that in some chronic pain cases, phantom limb cases are sometimes chronic pain cases, the pain is illusory. So that you might think that if you think pains represent damage, you might think that the damage that it's representing is not there, and you might be worried that that commits me to saying either someone with a chronic phantom pain for years and years and years either isn't in pain, or they are in pain, but it's not unpleasant, or they are in pain and it is unpleasant, but it's not bad for them. But I'm not committed to any of those things. For me, they are in pain because they're in a state that's representing a part of their body is damaged. It's not, but they're in a state that's representing it. It's representing that damage is bad for them, so they're in unpleasant pain. And if the whole story I told today is right, that's really, really bad for them. So I think I'd say all the intuitive things, as it were, about chronic pain. For intensity, actually, again, I just agree with you. Intensity is crucial, but the intensity of the unpleasantness. So I think it's much, much worse to have a highly intensely unpleasant pain as against having a mildly unpleasant pain. So it's true, unpleasantness admits of degrees of intensity. Valuism conforms with that quite nicely, because values also admit of gradations. Things can be worse or better. And I absolutely agree. So I guess in a way, what you're pushing me to do, and I would happily do this, is add a third clause. It's worse for you to be, it's more unpleasant and worse for you to be in a pain that represents a bodily condition as damaged and very bad for you, as against being in a conscious state that's representing a bodily condition as being damaged and only slightly bad for you. So I think intensity is not a problem, I think.
Okay, thanks for your talk. I have three short questions. The first is about the relation between pain and damage.
Okay.
The evaluativist content in your account and the indicative one are directed to damage, right?
Yes.
Okay. And this idea is in conflict with one of the main aspects of the definition of pain provided by the International Association for the Study of Pain. You know, the idea of pain experience is distant or even independent of tissue damage. Mm-hmm. So what do you think about this conflict?
Well, I guess kind of what I said in the chronic pain case, that what it is, and a way of setting things up, just by the way, that account of pain as against the account of its unpleasantness is common to all members of this dispute. So this is an ad hominem point. If I face a problem here, we all face a problem here, or at least me and the... But I don't think any of us face a problem here coming from that definition, because I haven't said that what pain consists in is having a damaged body. I've said what pain consists in is having a sensory state that represents, quite possibly wrongly, that a part of your body is damaged, right? So, similarly, you can have a visual experience of a red cube when there's no red cube there, but you've still got a visual experience of the red cube. So the pain is constituted by the perceptual sensory state whose content might be utterly inaccurate, not by the damage. So the fact that you can be in pain when you're not damaged, I don't think is a problem. That said, there's a sort of follow-up problem which people press, and I do really feel the force of this, which is that the relationship between pain and damage is very, very loose indeed. Mm-hmm. And you might think so loose, this might come back to Jesse's point in a way, well, maybe from a different direction anyway, you might think so loose that it's really not doing much work to bring representation here. There would be so many cases of illusion. And I do take, and actually a very closely related point to that is you might think that once your body is representing damage, it's too late. Surely a better system, and the imperativists have a nice account of this, surely a better pain system should be one that prevents damage, not just kind of tells you about it once it's happened. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I feel the force of that worry. And what I'm inclined to do, I haven't thought about this much, but what I'm inclined to do is to talk about the representation of the threat of damage instead of a current damage. So, but I mean, that, as I keep saying, is a sort of gesture. I need to think about that more. But I'm hoping that that might help with those kinds of worries. Okay. But the mere fact that there can be damage without pain is not a problem, I think.
Okay, it's okay. My second and third question is about pain and consciousness. You said nothing about why this composite content, evaluative and indicative, is conscious. Am I right assuming that you have in mind some form of first-order representationalism about phenomenal consciousness? And if I'm right, what kind of motivation can you tell us about this?
I think what I'd be inclined to do, kind of embarrassingly as a philosopher of mind, I don't think about consciousness enough. So I'm trying to remain on the fence. I'm trying to remain neutral about accounts of consciousness. But yeah, I mean, for the sake of argument, let's say, well, look, certainly the motivation for this kind of view of pain in the hands of someone like Ty is because he is a first-order representationalist about phenomenal consciousness, and he thinks that unpleasantness is a phenomenal feel, and that aspect of phenomenal consciousness, and he wants to give an account of it consistent with his overall view. So, I mean, let's say for the sake of argument, yeah, that is my approach. But I mean, if someone wanted to be a higher-order theorist, I'm not sure I'd object to saying, well, okay, this all going on in the absence of higher-order, the relevant higher-order representation, I might want to say, well, to the extent that I'm committed to the unpleasantness being a conscious state, then I could just say, okay, well then throw in higher order representations and add that to the mix. So I think I can sit on the fence about that. But yeah, my inclinations historically, as it were, have been to be a first order representationist about character.
And the third question is related with this kind of issue about unpleasantness and unconscious states. What about the possibility of unconscious pains? What do you think about it? Do you think that it's possible or not? Maybe it is related with your position about the possibility of unpleasant states unconscious, unpleasant states. That is possible in your account, or
One can clearly be in nociceptive states which are unconscious and which will cause all sorts of aversive behavior, though unconscious. Or that, unconscious and conscious have myriad uses here, so it becomes very messy very quickly. But I think I've got no opposition to that, and indeed that seems highly plausible to me. What strikes me as plausible is that what's bad for someone is to be in a state of consciously unpleasant pain. So if you're unconscious of the pain, that's supposed to be allowed that idea in the first place. And its unpleasantness is... Well, see, because I want to tie, I suppose, the normative and the unpleasantness so closely together, I think I would be inclined to say that the unpleasantness is a necessarily conscious state. But I'm happy with unconscious pains. But it's a nice question, and yeah, as I said, I need to think more about how all of this relates to the overarching consciousness debate.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I'm not a philosophist. I have studied philosophy of science, some authors, but some philosophers said that's not philosophy, so...
No, that's philosophy.
Yeah. This is a very encrypted presentation. It's for philosophers in a philosophical way presented. So, because yesterday was so rich and we could just share our thoughts, I would like to ask you, what maybe it's your second question, but it's too encrypted for me. What is your theory of perception? Because I don't know anything about the theory of mind, the specific trait you're using. What is your theory of perception? And for me to have a space in my mind to compare it with, could you try to relate it with Merleau-Ponty's theory of perception? Would you say it's nothing at all like that? It's near that? Because you use some of the examples he uses to talk about these perceptual experiences and the difference between the reality and the phenomenological representation of that.
Good. Thanks. And yes, you're right, as Aaron already apologized, but let me do so again for this being a difficult paper for non-philosophers. Unfortunately, I can't say much about the relationship between my views of perception and Merleau-Ponty's because I'm not aware enough. Embarrassingly, I know enough about Merleau-Ponty to know he's someone I ought to be reading. It's not that I'm dismissive of his work, but I'm just not expert enough on it to draw any sensible contrasts and comparisons there. As for, maybe it would be helpful though for non-philosophers to put things broadly in this way. The kind of tradition I'm coming from is one which sort of started off by saying, look, there's two big problems. I mean, they have someone like Michael Ty in mind here. Two big problems with naturalizing the mind. Two properties that mental states seem to have that is going to, on the face of it, seem very hard to account for in any naturalistic, sensible, as it were, way. One of them is phenomenal consciousness, the feature of some states that they feel a certain way to the person who is in those states. Famously, there's a paper in philosophy, What It's Like to Be a Better Case. It feels like something to be pinched. It, in a sense, feels like something. It's like something for someone to smell a skunk. The thought is some mental states have a feel, a conscious feel. There's something that's like to undergo them. That's one of the properties. The other property is representation. Some mental states are about things. Rocks aren't about things, chairs aren't about things, but some mental states are about things. They're intentional, not in the sense that you're intending anything, but in the sense that they represent. They're true or false, they're accurate or inaccurate. There's been a move in the philosophy of mind, contested by lots and lots of people, this is very far from uncontroversial, which tries to say, no, there's only one problem actually, because those end up being, this is an oversimplification, but the same property. The best way to explain what it feels like to be in certain states is to give an account of what it is that's being represented to you when you're in those states. So the best way of giving an account of what it is, what it feels like to you to see a red cube in front of you is to unpack what's being, as it were, what you're being informed of, maybe inaccurately, by your visual experience when you're accusatively seeing a red cube, or for that matter, hallucinating a red cube. So look, in short, the thought is that perceptual states, this falls short of a theory of perception, it's a sort of book-length project, but is that perceptual states are, in a sense, belief-like. They carry content, they inform you about the world, or indeed misinform you about the world, but in such a way that they end up feeling a certain way. And I'm sort of, within that tradition, I'm saying, and pain states are like that too. On the face of it, they might not seem it, they might not seem clear what they're telling you about the world, and actually they're not telling you anything about the world beyond your body, but my thought is they're telling you something about your body that's damaged. Then there was the worry in the sort of history of this debate, hang on, that might kind of capture the pain, but does it capture the hurty bit, the unpleasantness? And then we've all gone different ways at this point, and the way I want to go is to say, yeah, could just say it doesn't just represent the damage, it represents that damage evaluatively. It tells you not just, look, there's some damage in some sort of neutral sense, it tells you this is really bad. So that's, I completely appreciate you needing some context, but that's some of the, and yeah, again, apologies for not supplying that already, I had so much material. But that's the kind of context in which, does that help a bit? Okay, good.
This is just a general question. I was wondering how you can extend the evaluative account of non-instrumental badness of pain to emotional pain.
Excellent, yeah.
Do you think the normative demand still stands in the case of emotional pain?
Good. Again, I should stop saying things like this, but I haven't thought about that nearly enough. But it's an excellent question. It's something I should think about, not least to keep with the history of the debate for a second. As you very possibly know better than I do, it's theorists of emotions who first started invoking evaluative content to explain various emotions. Although often, it seems not so much with affect in mind, just I think with other considerations in mind than the unpleasantness of this emotion or the pleasantness of that emotion. But nonetheless, evaluativism, if you like, broadly construed, first cropped up in the theory of emotions. And in a sense, I'm just stealing it, and a couple of others are sort of stealing it and applying it to pain. So certainly there's room for extension, as it were. Is there room for extending the normative account? I hope so, because I think it would be worrying for me if I couldn't extend the normative account. But on the face of it, there's room for that. If you accept any of this, which most of you probably don't, but if you do accept any of this, you know, I think it's bad to be in an unpleasant state of grief. Now, some people worry about, me or others saying that sort of thing because they think, well, no, it's not, because grief is kind of appropriate, it's helpful. All that's true, of course, but I think that's compatible with saying, yes, but it's overridably, non-instrumentally bad to be in that state. Take an illusory state of grief, where no one has actually died. There's no state of affairs to be appropriate to. That strikes me as a bad state to be in. So the brief answer is, I hope so. And on the face of it, I can't see any sort of utterly overriding problems in extending the normative account, as well as just the account of the states, but the account of the badness of the states. I don't see any problems in extending that, which is a bit quick. I suspect Michael, after the talk, is going to tell me about all sorts of problems, or maybe you are. But yeah, I hope it extends. Does that? Yeah. Thanks, man. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Thanks. I went very quick. Sorry. You were looking like you were following. So,
I was following.
good.
Sometimes I got lost.
Sure. But
Very good.
thank you.
I was wondering if you could draw some sort of like analogy between taking painkillers
No, that's fine.
and taking like to the